Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another class about Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. And this one is called the peace equation. And the equation is because we're going to have a number of things that equal a sense of perfection. So you have conflict and you have communication, and that ultimately equals connection, as we'll see. In the previous class that I gave, I talked more in overarching terms about the concept of Shalom Bayis. And today we're going to be a little more specific, like hands-on, things that we can actually do to make our marriages better. And a key element in everything we learn about today is the fact that good marriages can continue to become better. In fact, that is the only way for a marriage to be able to function, as we will see. Okay, so we're going to begin today by looking at a rather unusual piece of Gemara. Surprise, surprise, a rather unusual piece of Gemara. This Gemara is also found in Masechet Brachot, very different context than the previous Gemara that we learned. In the previous class we talked about dreams and imagery, and like the images that are used to depict a healthy or a good marriage. Here the Gemara is about prayer. It's the beginning of Masechet Brachot. This is on Daf Ches. I made your photocopies, so you see it that's the first photocopy you have, which is just the text of the Gemara. The Gemara is found on Daf Ches Amud Aleph, and the Gemara begins with the analysis of a particular verse. And the verse is, Al Zot Yitpalel Kol Chasid. This is a verse which comes from the 32nd Psalm. And David HaMelech says, for this, every pious person should pray. Le'et mitzo, for the time of his or her need. For the time of need. So you should pray for the time of need. What does this mean? So Rashi says, Yitpalel le'et mitzo. Rashi says, Yitpalel, you should pray, sheyiyu mitzuyin bo ki sheyitzdarach. Don't wait till you have the need to start praying. You should pray for this before. So when the need will come, you'll already have prayed. You'll already have made the request. Since you put the request in, Hashem is going to respond to you. Okay, fine. So that's what the Gemara says. Le'et mitzo, you're going to need it. Don't wait until you need it. Beat the rush. Pray for it now. Well, okay, that's very nice. But what is David HaMelech talking about? If that's what it means, we should probably know what we're praying for. You have to pray for something specific. You can't say, I'm praying for whatever need I have, whenever I need it. When I need it, then it should come my way. So the Gemara is going to clarify or qualify what exactly we're referring to when we say le'et mitzo, for the time of need. And the Gemara says the following. Omer Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina said, this is the first of numerous answers, by the way. The Gemara is going to give a whole bunch of different answers of what this might mean, but the first of the responses or qualifications is a teaching of Rabbi Chanina, who said, Le'et mitzo, the time of marriage, the time of need, zo isha. This is a wife. So we're talking about a man's prayer. And what is Le'et mitzo? Le'et mitzo, this is the wife that he's praying for. So the obvious question is, why is that called Le'et mitzo? Literally, the word mitzo means when you find yourself in need. The time of when you find yourself needy. And it's going to spring upon you. You're going to find yourself needy. And then you don't have time to pray because it just happened already. You found yourself, proverbially speaking, in that situation. Now, it's very important to point out that Rashi is clear about his interpretation of le'et mitzo. It's the time of the find. The time. He's talking about the time. However, if you take a look in the Sefer Hasidim, the Sefer Hasidim speaks about this very statement in the Talmud. And the Sefer Hasidim says, V'darshu Chachamim, the Chachamim expounded, and he's referring to Rabbi Chanina here, that le'et mitzo, zo isha, means not you're praying for the time, when the time comes upon you, but le'et mitzo, zo isha, sheyazme le'akadosh baruch hu isha tova, that a man should pray that Hashem is going to give him a good wife. So it's not Eight mitzo is not the time. Eight mitzo is for the time of the find. When is the time of the find? That he should get a good wife. And the Sefer HaChasidim goes on to share a fascinating medrash. The medrash is actually found in the Midrashic Rabbi. At the end of the 15th chapter, I think it's found in the 17th chapter. Also, the medrash says that there was a pious person, there was a chassid echad, who married a woman, and she was a chassidah. She was a pious woman. And the medrash calls her a isha chassidah gemura, an entirely pious woman. Liyomim, as the days went on, I guess they weren't coming to my marriage classes, or maybe they were, I don't know, whatever they were. The marriage didn't work, unfortunately. They were both very pious, but they weren't bringing the best from each other, and it didn't go well. So not for reasons of piety or impiety, but for personal reasons. Nasan lo get. He ends up giving her a divorce, and they separated. And they went the wrong way. So halach, he went. V'nasa isha ra. He married a bad woman. He married a bad woman. She was a blial. She was a woman who did not accept upon herself the yoke of heaven. She did not have reverence. She didn't have the right values. So she may have been an enchanting person, and she may have had many other attractive qualities, but she didn't have the right values. Vizot, and the other woman, who had all the right values, maybe she was missing some of the other things, but she had all the right values, she ended up marrying a very wicked man. Go figure. So the pious man marries a wicked woman, and the pious woman marries a wicked man. Guess what happens? What's the end of the story? So the Sefer Hasidim says, you know what the end of the story was? HaChasid azav midato, the Chassid left his way or measure of living behind, the nepach, and he changed, he transformed. Ba'atzat ishto hara'ah. By virtue of the cajoling or advice or encouragement that he got from his bad wife. He became like her. He became bad. The harasha, and the wicked man who married the pious woman, shav midishase. He ended up doing tshuva. He abandoned his path of folly and sin. The nasa chasid gomer. He became a totally pious individual. And how did it happen? Al yedei ishtoi. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Sounds so chauvinistic, doesn't it? Like all of Judaism, such chauvinistic Judaism. Right? Okay, so the Sefer Hasidim understands our Gemara by virtue of that medrash. He says, so if the medrash is talking to us specifically about an isha tova, about a good wife, that you should pray for a good wife, it's not about a time. So le'et mitzvah is the time of the find. The subject of the find is not the time of the find, but the woman, the good wife herself. But anyway, that's what the Gemara says. Fine. So this is the straightforward understanding of the Gemara. We have the approach of Rashi, where it's talking about you have to be fortuitous, you have to have mazel, you have to in that time when you're going to find, and how do we know this? How do we know it's talking about a find? So the Gemara says, because there's a verse. The verse is found in Shlomo HaMelech's Proverbs. It's in the 18th chapter, and it says, what does it say? Matzah isha, matzah tov. You found a woman, you found good. So, matzah isha, matzah tov is understood that if you found a good woman, you found something good. That's what we will have to understand it, although at this point it sounds just like, you found a woman? Good for you. You found good. You found good. You got a shidduch, you're good. Now, the truth is that the pasuk is being used to show us a link between the words le'et mitzo, which is mem tzadik aleph, the time of a find, and matzah isha, finding a woman, matzah tov. That in both of the verses we see this is find discussed, and because a woman is not, it doesn't say you married a woman, nasa isha kibel tov, or you married a woman so you got good. It says matzah. It says a find. So it's a find. So it says, then it must be that this is the connection between the teaching that we learned, Al Zos Yishpal Chassid, and that's the first teaching that the Gemara offers, a proof that getting married is a find. And of course, a find means that it's beyond the efforts that we make, but rather it's like a mazel thing.
Is it time of the find when a young man becomes that age when he's considered proper for marriage? I don't think
it's a question of a young age or an old age. I think it's a question of the time to get married.
Okay.
A person's supposed to be married. So whenever it is that the person's supposed to be married, and he finds a good wife, okay. That's a find. That's a find.
It's referred to as the time of the find.
The time of the find.
Okay.
Interesting, huh?
I'll wait.
So that's like the wisdom of Fiddler on the Roof. Find me a find, catch me a catch, right? For all the Narishkeit in that play/movie, there's a lot of wisdom that they took from the Gemara. They knew. He was a very educated fellow, Shalom Aleichem. He knew all kinds of things. I don't know how pious he was, but he was very educated. So he knew that Torah Jews look at marriage as a find. As a find. A find means that it's a mazel thing. That's like people, when somebody says, I charge however much an hour, and how was Parnassa today? I worked 5 hours, I got paid for 5 hours. You don't say, wow, I found money today. You didn't find money today. You worked for it. But when somebody finds money or finds a deal or something, it's a find. Wow, that's a find. So that's like a different kind of thing. That's when it becomes actually like a find. And the point here is it's beyond your efforts, that this is a gift from a higher place. That's the way to look at marriage. That the way we should look at marriage is a gift. If you got a good wife, it's a gift. It's a gift. It shouldn't be taken for granted. And you can't say, well, I did all the right things. I went to all the right websites and I spent the time. So of course, naturally, I married well. No, don't say that. That's just not true.
So we're thinking find almost like finding a treasure.
Like finding a treasure.
Find it.
Like finding a treasure.
Okay.
Exactly. So I should mention it's a silly little story, but it makes a point that there was a fellow who saw somebody outside in the parking lot, the dark parking lot, and he was looking. He was looking right under where the headlights were. He was looking. So he said to him, what are you looking for? He said, I'm looking for my keys. I dropped my keys. So the man said, oh, well, let me try to help you. So he started looking for him, and he says, are you sure you dropped them here? He says, no, I didn't drop them here. He says, if you didn't drop them here, why are you looking here? He says, because here it's light. Of course, that's ridiculous, right? You have to look where you lost it. So a person says, I'm looking for a shidduch. We're looking for a shidduch. Oh, I go to the base Midrash every day. I'm looking for a shidduch. Well, that's not where you find the shidduch. You have to make the efforts to find the shidduch, or you don't get a shidduch. It's not going to fall on your head by mistake. So you have to make the effort. You have to pursue it and so on and so forth. But when you get it, it's a gift. You have to know it's a gift. Okay, fine. That's how the Gemara introduces this. Then the Gemara says something very strange. The Gemara says, Ma'arava is the way we refer to Eretz Yisrael. Now, there are many of the Mefarshim who discuss this idea that Eretz Yisrael is called Ma'arava. In fact, there's a Rashi in Maseches Bava Basra who says clearly that Eretz Yisrael is to the north, to the south of Bavel. Bavel is in the north. Bavel is B'tzfeina shel Eretz Yisrael. So if Eretz Yisrael is being referred to directionally, and the Gemara is being compiled in Bavel, we should have said Lidroma, in the south, not in the west. So why does it say in the west? So the Tosfos Rid says because Israel is southwest. Southwest. And because Israel is southwest, they called it Ma'arava. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Shechina b'Mayrav, that the Beis Hamikdash faced the westerly direction, that the world used to worship east because the sun rose there. We rejected sun worship. We turned our backs to the sun. Maybe it's something to do with that. At any rate, when we lived in Bavel, we used to face southwest. That's where we faced when we davened. Just like in Canada, we face southeast, because Eretz Yisrael is southeast. And if you're living in Eastern Europe, especially in the more western areas of Russia, you have to be facing south, very much south, only a little bit east, because you're very much north of where Israel is. At any rate, that's what they used to do. That was the euphemism. So it says, B'Ma'arava, in Eretz Yisrael, ki nosev enosh itza, when a man would marry a woman. So it says, when you get married, amru lehachi, they would come to this guy and they would say to him, Matzah or moitze? Matzah or moitze, huh? What kind of question is this? Matzah or moitze? What does this mean? And the Gemara elaborates and explains. It doesn't say they used to say matzah or moitze and the rest of the pasuk. It says they would say matzah or moitze, huh? Matzah or moitze. Let's do come to the guy and say. But the Gemara elaborates. The Gemara says matzah, tichsiv matzah isha, matzah teif. You found a woman, you found good. And that's the pasuk that was quoted earlier, and that's why the Gemara is introducing this pasuk here. And the end of the verse says, v'yafek ratzin mehashem, or mehashem atayv. You bring forth a desire from Hashem. So Hashem desires you, and it's a good thing. You're bringing forth a ratzin mehashem. Hashem's pleasure, because you're married and you're building a home and so on and so forth. But then there's another verse, and this is also from Shlomo HaMelech, only this is in Ecclesiastes. This is in Kohelet Zion. Shlomo HaMelech says, Umeitze, ani mar mimoves esa isha. I have found more bitter, I find more bitter than death is the woman. Now this is the same man. The Shlem Shalom HaMelech. I know he married a lot of women. So some of the women he married, maybe it was matzah tov, he found good. And some of the women he married, he'd rather have killed himself. That's what he seems to say. But the tense of the words is different. So matzah means a find, whereas others interpret it. It's not here in the Steinsaltz translation by Evan Yisrael. It says find and finds. But many translate it as found. Matzah is found, like a find. I have a find. Something that happened already. But moitza is I find. That's dynamic. I find this woman to be worse than death. So they would say to this guy, matzah or moitza? In other words, did you marry a good woman or a bad woman? And think back to the Sefer HaChasidim that we talked about before, and how a good woman can influence a husband in a proper way, and a bad woman can influence him in the opposite way. Now, of course, this Gemara sounds very strange. First of all, which person just got married, and he purposely married a bad person? And you say, so, you married a bad woman? He says, yeah, I'm going to be really bad. I'm looking forward to having a miserable life. Said no one at his chuppah ever. Even though many people, unfortunately, after the chuppah did get divorced, sadly. We're like at 70% divorce outside of the Torah community, and those who are extremely committed to marriage and so on and so forth. You look at the looser elements of society, it's way beyond 50%. Which means, one of my colleagues pointed out, he says, every time you go to a wedding, all those people standing around there are smiling. 7 out of 10, 7 out of those marriages are ending in divorce. 7 out of 10, that's crazy. Would you make an investment if I told you, I have a great investment for you. You might become a multimillionaire. That's about 30%, 35%. But you probably lose all your money, or at least half your money. You want to invest? Who would say yes? Nobody would be able to sell an investment like that. It's a fantastic investment. It's an amazing investment. You invest in this penny stock, I'm telling you, this could be amazing. Just sink $1 million in here, and within a few years, you could be worth $100 million. You also may lose all your money. But go ahead. There is like a 30%, 33% chance, or 35% chance they're making a lot of money. Nobody would do that. If they came to you and said, we're going to perform a life-altering surgery, it may result in the amputation of a few limbs, or it's going to extend your life by many years. It's a 30% rate of success. Who would sign up for that? I don't think anybody. So my friend, the colleague said to me, he says, why is everybody running to get married? Like, what are they thinking? If you think about it, it's fantastic. People live with such optimism. They just, somehow, there's something inside them that wants to get married, even though the numbers don't tell a good story. So I think that's because there's we have a neshama inside us, and people inherently know that it's a godly thing, and therefore it's a goodly thing, and that's why they're looking for it. That's my personal read on it. I can't make sense out of it otherwise. There is nothing else quite like it where people would make an investment with these possibilities. So what's the logic of coming to a chassan who just got married, and like it sounds like we're talking about like a young fellow over here, and it's not exactly in the Torah community. They haven't been living together for 10 years. Like he barely knows her. Matzah or mitzah? Did you marry a bad woman or a good woman? So obviously it doesn't make any sense really. But the Mepharshim struggle with this, try to explain it in different ways. The Vilna Gaon says something very interesting. The Vilna Gaon says, these were learned people. They were not ignoramuses. They knew the pasuk in Mishlei, they knew the pasuk in Koheles, but they didn't come to the person and say, Matzah isha matzah toiv, or Matzah aniyas isha mami mavas. They didn't recite the whole verse. They would just say a word, Matzah or Matzah. Matzah or Matzah. And so the Vilna Gaon has his own way of like kind of taking it in a direction of the Matzah or Matzah, but there are many who understand then the Gemara to mean this, that the real kind of defining hallmark of marriage is going to be, is it something you found already, or are you still finding? Are you still looking? You still finding? Or have you found already? Some Vilna Gaon himself says that this is like advice, giving a person advice, to say what you do with your marriage is in your hands. If you'll work at your marriage, and if you succeed in your marriage, it can be an amazing thing. Matzah isha, matzah tov, v'yafik ratzim Hashem, it's going to be fantastic. However, chas v'shalom, your marriage doesn't work. You're not going to be working at it. It could be bitter as poison. It could be death itself. And therefore, it's almost like advice that the chassan didn't ask for, but he's being reminded of what's at stake here. What kind of, when you're going into this, know full well that it depends. If you're bringing Hashem into your life, and if you're marrying for the right reasons, then you have to figure out Simei Hashem. Otherwise, it doesn't work out. But there are many who maintain that the emphasis here is on the tense of the matzah or motzah. Sometimes I talk to young couples. One of the questions I like to ask young couples is if they're planning to raise a family. Because, as per the last class I gave in the anticipation series, every single child born is one child closer to Mashiach. We have to empty old neshamas out if we want to bring Mashiach. That's the Gemara says that. It's like you guys got to build a family. And one of the saddest things that I oftentimes hear from them is, well, we're going to give it a few years to see if our marriage works. If we're still married in 3 or 4 years, then we're going to start a family. Because I don't want to, we don't want to start a family and then we'd be divorced. I'm like, guys, that doesn't sound very trusting. It sounds like you're kind of going into this marriage like, let's see how it goes. We can always get divorced, so let's try it. We've lived together 5 years. We tried that. It seems kind of work. We don't hate each other yet, so we still, So let's try to do another few years. And then if we can actually make this work, because it's 70% divorce, they'll tell you so many people. If we still make it work, then that's not the Jewish way of marriage. And another thing is that people are always like measuring their spouse next to other people. They're still like making up their mind, so to speak. So I'm not sure. Having buyer's remorse? Did I get the best wife? Did I get the best husband? Could I have scored better? Could I have done better? So this is the question, really. This was being told. There's a certain finality to marriage. It's found. It's found. You found your wife. Don't go into marriage motzah. You're still looking. I'm still checking out other things. I once had a group of Catholic kids there. And they had a really good time. They enjoyed it, and the teachers enjoyed it. And I spoke to them about the 7 Noahide laws, and about Hashem and creation. So they called me after. They said, "Would you come to the school? Come to school and talk?" I said, "I'm not going to go to the sanctuary." And they said, "No, it's just a classroom." Okay. I called Rabbi Shachar. He said, "Yeah, it's okay. Go to a classroom." So I went to the classroom, and all of a sudden the kids started asking me questions. They're asking me questions about Christianity. I'm like, guys, this is not my pay grade. I can't answer you questions about, I don't really know anything about Christianity. I can talk to you about Judaism. I think that's what I'm here for. And they're like, well, how are you going to be tolerant if you don't know about Christianity? I'm like, I have no problem being tolerant of everybody. I have no issues. He said, well, but if you're not open-minded and you don't learn everybody's faith system, you could become a bigot and a racist or a fascist. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I never heard of such a thing. Who told you that? He said, well, look what happens when there isn't dialogue and people aren't learning other faith systems, learning with other people. I said to him, you know what, guys? The last time I checked, it wasn't Jewish people who loaded people onto cattle cars and put them in ovens. So we don't really have this issue. This is not our thing. If you feel you have that issue, fine, I'm here to answer your questions. But I am not really interested. I'm not looking for another faith system. I'm very happy with my faith system. And so they're giving me more pushback. I said to them, okay, let me make it very simple for all of you guys to understand. Are any of you in meaningful relationships? It's like 11th graders, Yes, some of them said, yeah. I said, you're planning to be in a meaningful relationship? Yeah. Planning to get married? Yeah. So they tell me, after you get married, are you still going to date? Or that's it? You found the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. So they kind of said, well, once you get married, you get married. So I said, so I'm kind of married. I'm not dating. I'm married to Hashem. I'm married to Judaism. I'm not looking for anything else. I found what I need. I said, if you would like me to answer your questions, that's fine. If not, I can leave now. But I did not come here to study the faith systems. I don't believe in that. So one of the kids says, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. I go, really? Is it? He says, yeah. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. In your testament, I said, we have one testament. You call it the Old Testament. For us, it's just the Testament. In your testament, is there a book called the Song of Songs? I don't know. I said, well, don't you think you should know the books in your testament? And he said, ask your teacher. Yes, there's a book called Song of Songs. Do you know what the book of Song called Songs is? So he says, well, it's something about a song, a man, a woman. So what is a song between a man and a woman doing in the Bible? It's Romeo and Juliet in biblical tense. So teacher said, I don't know. So I said, Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages of all time, said that all the books of what we call our Bible are sacred. But this book is the most sacred of all. I said, could you explain to me why a book about a man pursuing a woman or vice versa is the most sacred book of all? A love story, like a love poem? Why is that so sacred? And I said, I'll tell you why. Because it's a metaphor. It's all a parable. The deepest secrets of our relationship with God are encoded into those verses. And the metaphor of our relationship with God is a metaphor of marriage and husband and wife. So I said to this, I don't remember if it was a boy or girl, I said, are you sure that me using that metaphor is stupid? I'm just asking, because the Bible doesn't think it's stupid. So they said, oh, okay, fine. And then they were just receptive. They started asking questions, and I answered their questions, whatever. The point, of course, that I'm trying to make here is that our relationship with Hashem is a sum-zero game, where there isn't open possibilities. And the metaphor for that relationship is the metaphor of a marriage. And in a marriage, you're not looking at other people. You have your spouse. That's your person. That's the person you trust. That's the person you confide in. That's your best friend. That's the person you share your life with. You don't share your life with anybody else. You have one single individual with whom you build a life. And anything outside of that it's actually not okay. We don't believe in platonic friendships between men and women. It's inappropriate or downright dangerous. So it maintains a single kind of sum-zero game. Matzah, I found. It's not moitzah. I'm not looking. I'm not finding. I found. So there's a certain finality here that the Gemara is talking to us about marriage. And what we're going to do over the course of the next hour is talk about, on one hand, the finality of marriage, and on the other hand, the paradox in which we are continually discovering our spouses. Because there's a difference between finding and knowing. Finding and knowing, they're not the same. Now let's put that in the back burner, the difference between finding and knowing. We have a question over here. Okay, I'm glad you're learning, Robert. Again, if there's questions that are directly related to the subject matter, I'm happy to try and answer them. Okay, that's our opening, that's our first point of departure. Now the next thing I would like to do is direct your attention to this photocopy, the large photocopy that I made. This is taken, I made you these photocopies from the Brisa of Rabbi Yishmael, which is the opening of Torah Kohanim, or the Medrash Halacha of the third book of the Torah, also known as the Sifra. So the Sifra opens with what we call the Yud Gimel Midot, the 13 hermeneutical principles with which the Torah exegesis happens. So we use these principles to be able to understand and appreciate the messages that Hashem is giving us. And whilst the Bible will oftentimes look like a difficult to navigate or impossible to navigate book, that's because you aren't using the right principles. It's like if you want to read a map, you need the legend. So the legend will tell you that a centimeter equals 500 miles. And if you don't know that, if you don't know that a centimeter equals 500 miles, it's not going to be possible for you to map out your path using the map if you don't have the legend. The legend to the Torah discovery is these 13 principles. The truth is that these 13 are expanded to a much larger number, but they're 13 basic principles. Torah Jews recite this every single morning before we begin our daily prayers. The seventh principle, as it is arranged in the words of Rabbi Yishmael, goes like this. Sometimes we have Shnei Ketuvim Hamakhishim Zeh Zeh. Sometimes we have two verses which contradict themselves. They contradict each other. So what do we do? Then we have to wait for the third verse, which is going to resolve the contradiction. So we have two verses that contradict each other, The Bible does not contradict itself. And of course, if it's full of contradictory statements, it is not an open book, but a closed book. It's not telling you what to do, it's just confusing you. Go right and go left. So I go nowhere, because I don't know where to go. Go forward, go backwards. So where am I? Jump up and climb down. So you'll find the third pasuk, the third verse, which makes a resolution or reconciliation between them. Again, I'm using the words of the original Brisa. Ketzad, how does this work? Kosov echad oimer, one verse says, Vayered Hashem al har Sinai el Rosh Hahar. Now this is referring to the mass revelation at Sinai, where God, as it were, as it's described, comes down to Mount Sinai, to the summit of the mountain. That's found in Parshat Yitro. That's found in Exodus 20. Kapitel Chaf, Pasuk Yutes. Then we have Moshe Rabbeinu in last week's Torah portion, in the 4th chapter of Devarim, where he is giving us a recapitulation of mass revelation at Sinai in Parshat Veschanan. So in Deuteronomy 4, verse 36, Moshe Rabbeinu says, quote, Min hashamayim dibarti imochem. For I have spoken to you from the heavens. Now this seems to be a contradiction. God either spoke to us from the summit of a mountain, or he spoke to us from the heavens. Which one was it? Oh, very good. Sounds like two contradictory verses. So Rabbi Shmuel says, Melamed, this is instructive. It teaches us, Shehirchen HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shmei Shomayim Elyonim, that God proverbially bent the heavens, if you will, and the highest heavens, and he bent them or brought them down onto Har Sinai. So when Hashem brings the heavens down to Har Sinai, or bends the heavens onto Har Sinai, the answer is both. He spoke to us from heaven and he spoke to us at the summit of the mountain. So he spoke to us at the summit of the mountain because that's where he was, so to speak. He spoke to us from heaven because that's where the voice is coming from. That's where Hashem is speaking from. So the answer is both are true. And Rabbi Shmuel says, V'chein Amar David b'Sefer Tilim, and this is also stated by King David in the book of Psalms, Psalm 18, verse 10, that it says over there, Vayet Shomayim, Vayered, God bent the heavens, and he came down. Va'arafal tachas raglav, and there were the thick darkness or clouds beneath his feet. Obviously, anthropomorphism on steroids. So that's the first thing I wanted to share with you. I'm going to ask you a simple question. Just think about this for a minute before we go further. Why do we have to have a pasuk that says A, a pasuk that says B, and A and B are contradicting each other, it's from the heavens or a mountain summit, and then we get a third pasuk that says, aha, now that I got your attention. He bent the heavens, so it was from the mountain on and the heavens. Why don't you just say the third pasuk? Why do we have to give a contradiction first? Why do we have to have shnei chsuvim hamakrishim zeh two psukim which are contradicting one another, and then until they seem to be a contradiction, until ad she'yava shlishi v'echrei b'neim? Why is this? Okay, turn your page over. Another example of this. Kosov echad oimer. There's one verse that says, and this is Numbers chapter 7. Uvevoi Moshe el oyhel moyed l'daber itay. So when Moshe Rabbeinu came into the proverbial tent of meeting, that's what the Mishkan is called, God should speak to him. V'kosov echad oimer. Another verse tells us, and this goes back to Exodus 40, that it says, V'lo yochel Moshe lavei el oyhel moyed. Moshe Rabbeinu could not enter the tent of meeting. Well, which one is it? Did he come into the tent of meeting and hear God's voice, or could he not enter the tent of meeting? Good question. So, this seems to be a contradiction. Emer ma'ato. So this is resolved when we have another verse that clarifies. As long as the cloud filled, which means the presence of God filled the Mishkan, Moshe didn't walk in. The cloud goes away, and now Moshe Rabbeinu is able to enter. Rabbi Yisrael adds to this, and he says, it is stated, the Kohanim were not able to stand or minister before before Hashem, because the glory of Hashem had filled the entirety of the Mishkan. And then there's a pasuk that says, "V'sakoisi kapi alecha ad avri." So, and then it sounds like Hashem has to, so to speak, shield Moshe Rabbeinu from the angels. So we have a similar kind of resolution of there could be danger when the angels are loosed, this force is loosed, and then Hashem creates like a situation, a safe situation. These are two portions of the Torah's Kodesh. Now, I want to direct you to the Chumash. I give you a Chumash. Everybody's got a Chumash. Exodus chapter 25, verse 22. This is a discussion of the Aron, of the Ark of the Covenant. And we get the whole description of how the Ark is made. And after we get a description of how the Ark is made, we have that the cover of the Ark, and the cherubim that adorn that cover, which were placed on top of the Ark, and the luchot, the tablets, eventually are going to be placed within that Ark. And then the Torah says, "V'naidaiti lecha sham," I'm going to make myself known to you there. Make myself known to you. V'dibarti itcha, I'm going to speak to you, me'al hakaporos, from the top of that cover. Mibein shnei akruvim, between the two cherubim, asher al aron ho'edut, which is atop the ark of testimony. As kol asher atzavek, all the things that I'm going to command you with regard to Bnei Yisrael. Of course, that's the mitzvot are given to Hashem. So Rashi says, V'nadaiti. What does this mean? So V'nadaiti is not Hashem showing himself to Moshe. Ki she'ek ba'moed lecha. When Hashem says, the word V'nadati is not just when Hashem is going to make himself known, but rather it means when Hashem is going to have an appointed time. We're going to have an appointment. I'm going to, ki she'ek ba'moed lecha, when I make an appointment for you. What's this appointment about? To speak with you. So, Oto HaMakom Ek Valamoy. That's the spot. That's the spot where I make our meeting. Our meeting, that's our meeting place. Sha'avo Sham L'daber Elecha. I'm going to come there to speak to you. Now, of course, the problem is that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't enter the Holy of Holies. He's not allowed to enter the Holy of Holies ever. Only Aaron HaKohen goes into the Holy of Holies, and that's only on Yom Kippur, and only to bring incense. And there's no conversations going on. So, what's going on over here? Besides this, the Torah clearly says in the beginning of the book of Leviticus, right in the beginning of the very first pasuk in Chumash and Parshas Vayikra, that it says, as Rashi points out, "V'dibartcha itcha ma'ala kaperes u'b'mokem ma'acher u'emer." Elsewhere it says, "Vayidaber Hashem elav." God speaks to him, "May ohel moed," from the tent of meeting. So what's going on over here? So Rashi uses the Midrash of Rabbi Yishmael to explain this. So he says, "Nimtzu shnei chsuv magnichishim zeh zeh." Now the two examples of Rabbi Yishmael, one is about the voice of Hashem, and one is about the Mishkan. And this is an original Rashi, where Rashi is talking about both the voice and the Mishkan. He's fusing like both Midrashic teachings together in a single comment. And he says that you have two psukim which seem to be contradicting each other. One says God speaking from the Kaporet. The other one says that God is speaking to him in the Ohel Moed. So, Kosav Ashlishi, we have a third verse. And the third verse is Machriya, it resolves between the two. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Ohel Moed, says Numbers 7, Bamidbar Zayin, it's verse 89. By Yishma Esakol Medaber Elav, it sees, he hears the voice speaking to him. Which voice? Me'ala Kapiris. But where is Moshe when he hears that voice? Moshe Rabbeinu is nichnas l'mishkan. He enters the Mishkan. Once he comes in the door, Yored min hashamayim lebein hakruvim. Then from heaven, the voice comes between the kruvim, and the voice beams or broadcasts from there. And Moshe Rabbeinu was able to hear it in the entirety of the Ohel Moed. As Rashi explains, it was not a quiet voice, it was not a still voice, it was a booming voice, it was the voice of Har Sinai. Why did nobody else hear it? They weren't tuned into the dials. So, modern terminology, there was a satellite dish. That's the keruvim. There's a broadcast. Moshe Rabbeinu is tuned in the dials. Only he hears, nobody else hears, and that's the story of God's communication to Moshe Rabbeinu. So once again, we see how Rashi is using the legend to decipher the map. He's using the methodology that Rabbi Shmuel offers to figure out what's going on over here. So I'm asking a simple question. The simple question is, why do I need to have like this seeming contradiction of verses? Why does God need to say, I'm speaking to you between the keruvim, when nobody goes? And that's where we're nadaiti. That's where we're going to meet. That's where we're going to have our meeting. What are you talking about? Nobody meets there. Nobody's let it go there. No, I'm speaking to you in the Olam Moed. Well, hello. Well, which one is it? The voice will come down there. So, what is this? What is going on over here? I think it's a valid question. And what I would like to suggest to you is that this seeming dichotomy about our relationship with Hashem is also the dichotomy of our relationship with our spouses. It's the same kind of dichotomy. So here's an interesting detail. I forgot to take the sefer out, so forgive me. The one book you're looking for is not around when you need it. Okay. So the sefer that I'm using now is it's called Beauty HaChumash, or I think reprinted now as Marital Torah. What they did is they kind of fused together different sichos, different talks from the Rebbe. Oh no, actually I had the right book. I had the right one originally. Go figure. So this is lifted out of an edited talk from the Rebbe in Likutei Sichos Chelik Beis, in the second verse of Likutei Sichos, and it's also, I believe, a lengthy sicha, a lengthy edited talk from Chelik Chaf Aleph, from the 21st volume of Likutei Sichos. In volume 2, it's on page 301, and in volume 21, it's on page 110, if anybody wants to look at the original sicha. But I'm going to just give you the proverbial Cliff's Notes, okay, the synopsis. So the pasuk says, "B'chodesh hashlishi," it was the third month, talking about Har Sinai. Let's say Bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the Jewish people leaving the land of Egypt. B'yom hazeh, on this day, and B'chodesh hashlishi means Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the third month, and that's when they come to Har Sinai. There's a big emphasis on this being the third month. And there's all the Gemara that talks about a whole lot of triplicate, not to be confused with something else that comes in threes. That Moshe Rabbeinu was the third child, and that the Torah was given in the third month, and that the Torah is comprised of Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, that the Bible has 3 different levels in it, right? There's the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, then the books of the later prophets, and we have the Ketuvim, the scriptural writings. And that the Jewish people themselves divide into 3 classes, Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, and a whole bunch of other things, right? Moshe Rabbeinu is the third child. There's Miriam, Aaron, Moshe Rabbeinu is the third. So a lot of threes. And the Rebbe says, like, what's going on here with the threes? Why are we talking about threes? The Torah is all about one. It's Torah of oneness, right? The whole purpose of Torah is legalo, to reveal the oneness of Hashem in the world. So why would we emphasize 3 if the whole idea is to reveal 1? And the explanation, the Rebbe says, is that real oneness comes in 3 stages. The number 3 really symbolizes what? Why? Somebody who only knows one thing. He knows one thing. So you don't know anything else. It's not like you're really devoted to this. You're not tried and tested. All you know is this. And it's not a oneness in any real way. But then you learn of something else. Now you have a dichotomy. Now you know of something else. And then, now that you know of a dichotomy, or it seems to be, even on the surface, a contradiction, and you're able to bring together, to create harmony and balance, that creates a sense of oneness. That's the real essence. That's what oneness is really about. And the Rebbe says, an example of this is Hashem creates the world, and on the first day of creation, it says it's Yom Echad. It's just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is nothing else in the world, so to speak. And then on the second day of creation, and then we have all of a sudden division. And it's now there's 2, there's a heaven and earth, and so on and so forth. And there's no kitov, because it's all about division. When does it become kitov? God says kitov twice, it's very good. That's the third day. It's the third day. So the idea of threes represents this concept where what seems to be 2 polar opposites that are able to find fusion and harmony. And the Rebbe invokes the idea of the Shnei Ksuvim. He says this is similar to the idea of Shnei Ksuvim Hamakchishim Zeh Zeh that we talked about before. The first month is Nisan. And in Nisan, the Jewish people were taken out of Mitzrayim. But we didn't really do anything. It was all about God. God took us out of Mitzrayim. We were almost like spectators, watching things happening to us. We weren't really, so to speak, we went along for the ride. We weren't invested. We weren't really committed. And then, so the month of Nisan passes, we get into the month of Iyar, and what starts happening in Iyar? All of a sudden we start kvetching a plane. Well, so miracle after miracle after miracle, and now we're saying, well, how is this going to work? And where's God? And what's going on over here? And we make some very big mistakes in those first few weeks. So bad that the Rashi uses the metaphor, quoting our sages, that this father was carrying a child, and the child is attacked by a band of robbers, and the father shields the child. And then there's wild animals, the father shields the child. And the father's shielding and protecting the child, and then somebody comes by, and the father's holding a child. And the kid goes, "Did you happen to see my dad? I'm just curious, I haven't seen him." And the father said, "Really? I'll show you I haven't seen me." And he puts him down, and all of a sudden a dog comes and bites him. And that's the story of Amalek. So we have this really, really bad situation where things go so far off track that we actually have to go fight to defend ourselves against a vicious, brutal, monstrous enemy called Amalek. But we put the pieces back together. And we fight and we have strife, but by the time we get to the third month, we're ready to come together, ready to receive the Torah. This is the real oneness. This is the real oneness. The Rebbe says that's where the Torah specifically is given on the third month. I'm just giving you a synopsis of that talk. Okay, fine. So up until this point, I gave you lots and lots of Torah. So I want to talk to you now in the language of modern therapy and modern marital advice. So this is taken out of a couple of presentations that I was privy to, and I selected some different photocopies. I wanted to make it easy. So the idea is that we have within our experience as human beings, we have a part of us which yearns for connection and attachment. We aren't happy on our own. We want to be connected and attached. We want to be part of a community. We want to have friends. We want to be social with social animals. We need connection and attachment. But at the same time, we also have a deep-seated need to be ourselves. And in the language of modern psychology or marriage therapy, this is called connection and authenticity. So if you'll take a look at your papers, for example, the connection is the need. We have a need to be connected to others. Solitary confinement is one of the cruelest kinds of punishment that a person could experience, to be cut off from other people. At the same time, we have a need to be ourselves. We want to be me. Don't put me in a box. Don't put me in a circle. Don't take my voice away. We desperately want to be free. As the famous American revolutionary said just before he was executed by the British, he said, "Give me liberty or give me death." I think that was Patrick Henry who said that. So on one hand, we desperately want to be connected to others. On the other hand, we desperately want to be me. We want to love, and we want to be loved. People at Rahman al-San, they don't have children. They desperately want a child to dote upon. That's what drives them to adopt a child. They want to have something to love unconditionally. And we want to be accepted and loved unconditionally. And at the same time, we want and need to be an authentic expression of ourselves. Not being what somebody else wants us to be. We need to be ourselves. If we're not ourselves, we're not going to be happy. We want to be cared for by somebody else. At the same time, we want to be in touch with ourselves, in touch with our own body, in touch with our own values. We want to feel safe, we want to feel secure, and those are feelings that are provided to us by others. We want to belong. You want to be able to trust and depend on others. At the same time, we don't want to be dependent. We want to be independent. I once had a conversation with somebody about how nice it is to be a child, to get taken care of. And somebody said to me, "Would you want to be a child again?" I said, "Absolutely not. I never want to be a dependent. I loathe being dependent on others. I love being independent. It's a terrible feeling to be dependent. We should never know. Some people get very old, Nebuch, they become dependent. It's not a good feeling. But at the same time, we want to be able to depend on others. We want to be able to trust others. We want to be autonomous. We want to be part of a community. We want to create and expand. We want to be able to have others do things for us. This is a dichotomy. It is a dichotomy of who we are, really and truly, as people. So let's see if you have any questions over here. I'm not sure how somebody's removing champagne from the cork, but whatever. Okay, maybe. So the suggestion is going to be made now that marriage is a place, a space, where authenticity is nurtured. In other words, first paragraph here. Marriage is a place where our deepest hopes and dreams can be fulfilled. It is also a place where our deepest hopes and dreams can collide with reality. So the value that's attached to marriage is not just about attachment. It's about being me. We get married so we can be all we can be. In order for us to self-actualize, certainly according to Torah, but I think most people believe this, they need to be married. It is through marriage we experience true self-actualization. The marriage can enhance who I am as an individual, or it can crush who I am as an individual. Go back to the motzei and the motzah. Either it's good or it's horrible. When we sit with a couple, and this is, of course, something which people who are learning more about marriage counseling have to know, that our conceptualization always has to include an authentic expression of the self of each spouse. And that is that even if the connection is working, we still have to ask ourselves questions like, how much authenticity has each spouse relinquished in order to make the marriage work? And if you're relinquishing who you are in order to please somebody else, are you really in a good marriage? It's a very thoughtful thing, right? Authenticity and connection. These are needs that pull us in opposite directions. It could be argued that from our earliest life and throughout life, we struggle with balancing these two conflicting needs. I remember hearing from at the time, an eminent psychologist, child psychologist. This went back, this is like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. There was a terrible story here in Toronto where a kid was kicked to death by a group of thugs. It was terrible. The whole city was roiling about this, and it was so we made a big event at the city playhouse, and I brought in this guy named Dr. Norman Blumenthal. He must be pretty old today, right? It's 25 years ago. He was already, must have been in his 50s or 60s at the time. And I had a conversation with him. I arranged the whole thing. I sat and talked to him. And one of the interesting things that he said to me, I said, what is it that attracts a 16, 17-year-old kid? What is it that attracts them to a gang? What, are they criminally minded by nature? What attracts them? He said to me a fascinating thing. He said, when you have a small child, what's the first thing the child does? It's the first thing, and I had young children then. I was very much in the baby rearing years of my life. What's the first thing a child does when the child is very small, child wants to be nurtured and hugged? What's the first thing a child does? He said the first thing a child does is push back. First thing when a child can move, pushes back. The child wants independence. And children want to be independent of their parents. This is like a lot of teenagers are ashamed of their parents and want to run away from their parents. I think Mark Twain once said, when I was 18, my dad was the dumbest guy in town. By the time I was 25, it's amazing how many things he learned. Right? So a lot of kids are ashamed of their parents when they're teenagers, and they come to appreciate and value their parents or grandparents when they reach their 20s, certainly by their 30s, if they're normal people. So this is the idea. Well, what happens is the child pushes away from his parents, and he feels all of a sudden bereft. He wants to belong. He wants to belong. And that's the allure that the gang holds, where he's like independent, but he's belonging to something. People want to belong. And there's a conflict there. There's a conflict within people themselves, not just a conflict within marriage. And therefore, we could say like, okay, so the dance of marriage, proverbially speaking, is, I want to be connected to you as much as possible. At the same time, I want to be me. I don't want to be you, I want to be me. You want to be connected to me as much as possible, but you want to be you. Okay, we have a problem here. Because I am me and you are you. And since I am me and you are you, and since we're different people, how can we be so connected to one another if at the end of the day we have to be ourselves? Can I be me and at the same time be you? And the answer, of course, is no. So then how do we become more connected to each other even as we become more of ourselves? Imagine that. And what's the mechanism that allows us to do this?
Could you go back? I think you said no. Point number 3.
Point number 3, yeah.
Can I be me and at the same time help you to be you? I think you said no.
I think on some level the answer is no.
Okay.
It seems no. Of course, the answer, of course, is yes. Of course, the answer is yes, but it seems no. Like I can't help you be you. I have to be me. I have my way of doing it, and you have your way of doing it. So, like, how's this going to work? From that perspective, right? So the question is, how does this work? And I want to go back to the Gemara we started with, the Moitza and the Moitza. The find means that we are in this together, and we are not dating anymore. We are not deciding if we're going to be married. It's not your problem and my problem, your life and my life. No, it's our life. We are in this together. Our destiny is a shared destiny. Like many years ago, I was counseling a young person who was involved with somebody who was struggling with some very serious addiction. And she didn't know what to do. Should she continue this marriage, with this relationship? Should she not? And I said to her, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what to do. But this I want you to know. That right now, it's his problem. But if you get married, you can't look at it as his problem. Then it's your problem as much as it's his problem. Because marriage means a shared destiny. Your issue is his issue is your issue. It becomes our issues. So on one hand, everything is shared, and we become fused into a new entity, an entity of the marriage, the home, the couple. And at the same time, we all want to be ourselves. So how do we achieve this? How do we achieve this? So the answer is, let's go back to our Torah paradigm. There's the authenticity of Hashem being Hashem. And when Hashem's Hashem, nothing can be. Nothing can exist. Hashem takes you out of Mitzrayim. Yes, sir. But on the other hand, Hashem's authenticity, if you will, the authenticity of the transcendence of divinity, gets in the way of the authenticity of us as human beings. Us as human beings, we have Hashem gave us a mind. Hashem gave us a heart. He gave us desires. He gave us the ability to understand. We play a role here. If we didn't play a role, then what does He need us for? Why does Hashem have to create people? Make yourself a perfect world, then Hashem has His Gan Eden. Hashem doesn't want that. Hashem wants us to recognize Him and be mindful of Him and behave in a particular way because of Him. So we have a relationship. So there's the authenticity of the human being who says, I am. And then we get the Torah. And then we figure out how we're in this with Hashem together. And the authenticity of our human experience and the authenticity of the divine truth do not collide, but actually come together in harmony. That's the marriage we have with God. Shnei ksuvim hamakrishim zeh zeh. We have two psukim which seem to contradict. God is in the heavens, God is on a mountain. He's in our world or He's out of our world. What's the answer? There's a fusion. He bends the heavens down. HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to Moshe from the Holy of Holies. But at the same time, Moshe Rabbeinu can hear Him when he is in the scrimmage of the marital home, of that special meeting place of attentive meeting. So the thesis here is that marital conflict is actually a good thing. Instead of ignoring our conflicts, we need to deal with our conflicts. We need to understand where we're coming from. Conflict is the only way we can achieve these goals. We cannot achieve the balance between authenticity and connection unless we are going to deal with that conflict. We have a conflict. I have to understand where you're coming from. I have to understand your authenticity. You have to understand my authenticity. We have to understand who we are. We have to understand how it is possible for us to be ourselves and at the same time to transcend ourselves and come together as one. There has to be the Shnei Chsuvim HaMakrishim Zeh Zeh. If we don't have the two verses that contradict one another, we're never going to appreciate the harmony that the third verse brings. It has to be introduced as that. It's two verses. It's two statements. They contradict each other. So it seems. And then we have that third moment. Nisan and Iyar seem to be contradictory. And then comes Sivan. Then comes the third month. Something's bothering you.
Because with Hashem, there's a hierarchy. Whereas in marriage, there's sort of, like we know what Hashem wants is the truth and the emet, and we got to do it. Whereas marriage is parallel.
So obviously, it's not going to be a marriage is not going to be like our relationship with Hashem. And there's many times we use the metaphor of Hashem as a father, Avinu Avarachaman, or Shechina as like a mother. There's a variety of different images that we evoke, and none of them are accurate because there's nothing like God, right? However, there is an element of our relationship with Hashem that is marriage-like, and that's important to understand. Conflict is not something that works against the marriage. Conflict is a critical part of the dance that makes the marriage work. So what happens when couples have a conflict? So in Hebrew, in Torah language, we say you have to be mevater. Be mevater. She wants A and you want B. So what are you going to do? So one said, okay, I'll be mevater. Mevater means literally to let it go, to kind of give in. To give in. So, she wants to go to her parents, he wants to go to his parents, we'll go to your parents. She wants to go to his kids, he wants to go to her kids, we'll go to your kids. Fine, be mevater. It's a noble act to be mevater. You love somebody. It's not really what I like to do. It's not really what I want to do. But because I love you, I'm going to go ahead and doing this. However, if being mevater is always coming at the expense of authenticity, where I'm not myself anymore, eventually it eats away at the connection of marriage. Well, I'm just like baggage that comes along. Like, it's not working for me. So, if being mevater comes from a place of values and importance, that because I love you and because I care about you, that's why I'm willing to make a proverbial sacrifice or do it with your way, that's a beautiful thing. And that enhances connection and the authenticity of the marriage. However, if somebody's always being mevater, just giving in, then you're talking about an abusive kind of marriage. And it's not a question of tit for tat, who gives in or doesn't give in, but what we need to do is understand where we are coming from. Hashem put us together. So clearly this is meant to be. If Hashem put us together, we were meant, this is moitzah. I'm not finding, we're not in the midst of a find. Because that'll be more bitter. If you're always looking at somebody else or comparing your spouse to somebody else, that is more bitter than death itself. But if you understand, found. But found doesn't mean we don't work at it. Found means I'm committed to this. But at the same time, along with that found, there has to be a certain sense of a healthy dialogue and talking about things so that we get to understand each other, so we can appreciate the authenticity of who we are as individuals and what we each bring to the table, so that we together are working on creating what's called a marriage. And here is the polar opposite of how we started. So we started by saying, that's it, you found it, it's found. But I remember, if you remember the beginning of the class, I said there's a difference between found and known. Difference between found and known. The moment a husband and wife feel that they know each other, they know everything there is to know, so curiosity is lost. And when curiosity is lost, connection is lost, and the relationship stops growing. Think about that. So we tend to think, like, in the Fiddler on the Roof paradigm, do I love you? For 30 years, I'm doing your laundry, I'm this and that, I finish your sentences. Do I love it? I don't know if I love you. Well, the truth is, once upon a time, marriages weren't touchy and feely. And there was not so much emotion going on in marriages. And marriages were functional, and people didn't have time for emotions. If they had time for emotions, they devoted it to Ruchnius and their connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But today we're living in a very different world. Today marriages, and one could argue, are actually the way marriages are meant to be. That we can see this relationship between us and Hashem. It's supposed to be an emotional, it's supposed to be Ava, V'yira, and so on and so forth. So in the same way, now, we have to have this concept. Now we're seeing marriages. We have time for marriages today. We have AI doing things for us. We have time for relationship. So, in a problematic marriage, I know exactly who you are. I know exactly who you are. There's nothing more to know about you. In a happy marriage, I'm always curious to know who you are. I'm always learning. So as much as I've already found past tense, I'm still finding out new things. And this is counterintuitive. Here, the therapist put two things side by side. He wrote, in a problematic marriage, we know each other so well. In a happy marriage, we don't know each other. We're still learning new things. We're like one person. Sounds so romantic. No, we're two very different people. We are different people. We have different authenticity. We have different values to some degree. We're independent people. We can read each other's minds. Who says that's such a good thing always? Don't make assumptions. Besides, that's not even true most of the time. We finish each other's sentences. Sometimes I have no idea what my spouse is thinking. And that's why we're getting into a fight. So let's talk about it. Let's have a dialogue about it. It's that dialogue that allows for the marriage to actually thrive, to the relationship to continue to grow.
Is this written by a couple or a single?
No, this is written by a marriage therapist with many, many years under his belt. And he's making a point. I don't know, this is not Torah Messinai. This is, and it's not pop culture either. Yeah. There's a wisdom to it. I'm not saying I place full stock into it, but I think he's making a point. And it fits in very much into the whole Shnei Ksuvim Makrishim Zeh and the whole Torah way of framing it. He says, in a problematic marriage, you should know what I need without me telling you. Says who? That's the problem. We're not communicating. I need you to tell me, or I need to tell you what I need, or you won't know.
So I'm happily miserable, I guess.
Oy. In a problematic marriage, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Exclamation mark. In a happy marriage, why did you do that? I want to know more about you. Why did you do that? We're having this dialogue. And look the way he put it. He puts it, he says, the pain of knowing. Intimacy thrives in mystery and dies in familiarity. Very interesting way to put it. Again, I don't know, it's Torah Sinai. He says, a marriage in which each spouse knows the other beyond the shadow of the doubt is a marriage of enormous pain, emptiness, and loneliness. I think that's the Moitzi Marimavus. I know everything there is to know. A marriage in which each spouse is looking to discover something new in their partner is a marriage of joy and fullness and togetherness, because that continues the journey of the dance of marriage, of the Shnei Chsuvim HaMakrishim Zeh Zeh, out of which can come the Kosav HaShlishi, from which comes harmony. And this is, as Michal David correctly said, the concept of Tiferet, which is not Chesed and not Gevura, not the right or left, but rather a synergy and a blend of both. We are not exactly the same people. We didn't marry ourselves. We marry the spouse who has what we don't have. We're not finding marital bliss because we're married to a mirror, an exact replica. We're finding marital bliss because we're married to a mirror image or an opposite image. Because together we are completing and making one whole. Just as men and women are so different, and they have different needs and different ways to communicate and different ways to speak. And that's why a woman will say one thing and a man doesn't know what he's talking about. And they have to figure out how to communicate. That's the way Hashem made it. They have to figure out how to communicate. And the fact that they're different means that there's a tension, and that tension necessarily leads to harmony, or can lead to harmony, if we approach this right.
Look,
Men are from Mars, a woman. I think everybody's from planet Earth, really, but it's more like men are from Ma and women are from Ban, which is the different configuration of Hashem's name, and we have different kinds of souls and different kinds of neshamas, and there are some men who are more feminine and some women who are more masculine, and that's the way it is, and some men and women who are more opposite or closer to one another. But we're all, at the end of the day, we're all different, and we grew up in different homes, and we come from different parents, and we have different experiences. And rarely do you meet the girl next door, so to speak. And even if you did, they're two separate homes, and it's coming together, each with their own authenticity, through which we're able to forge and create a meaningful attachment and a connection. And that is the beauty of what we call marriage. So the real takeaway from this is that conflict in marriage is not a bad thing. Conflict in marriage is the thing that we have to use to better understand each other so that we can create a oneness in marriage. And as one wise person once said, he said, couples with a bad marriage only talk about important things because it's functional, it's utilitarian. He says couples who have a good marriage talk about all kinds of things. It's not only because he's not totalitarian. So who's picking up the kids? Who's doing carpool? Who's making dinner? Who's going shopping? Then there's no relationship. Then it's just utilitarian of two people who are in a business together or in an enterprise together. And it's by virtue of the friendship and the little things that actually we're able to nurture and develop the dynamic that is supposed to be a part of marriage. The Ava, the Achva, the Shalom, the Reos. When we do the bracha of Sheva brachas, we talk about friendship, and we talk about shared feelings and shared destiny. We talk about love. We talk about endearment. We talk about cherishing one another, and invariably that's going to come through the synergy of both. And I just will say as epilogue, just like a finish off, that from the very little we know about the Rebbe. What do we really know about the Rebbe? Somebody once came to the Frierdiker Rebbe and he said, "My father gekent our father." He said the person was not a very sharp blade. He said, "My father knew your father," or "I knew your father." And the Frierdiker Rebbe had a throaty laugh. He laughed and he said, "You saw my father. Nobody knew my father. Nobody knew my father." So nobody. I don't know. What do we know about the Rebbe? But the little bit we do know, about the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, is that they were extremely authentic and extremely connected. There was an unbelievable level of connection and an unbelievable level of authenticity between the two. They had what you would call the perfect relationship. They're not the parable, they're not the mashal, they are the nimshal. That's what with Hasidim we strive to kind of replicate a marriage of such mutual respect, of such independence, of such authenticity, and at the same time such incredible devotion and care and concern for one another, that's what marriage is really all about. Yeah. So that's what we have for today. I hope that this helps everybody improve their marriages, and the good marriages should become better marriages, and the more tension and the more we have to, music comes from tension. That's where we're able to make a better music, better symphony, better harmony, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us. We should all have shalom bayis. We have shalom bayis in our own homes. That becomes a receptacle for shalom bayis, for peace amongst Klal Yisrael, and ultimately peace, Gadol HaShalom, that it brings peace. We become a worthy vehicle for the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which will be experienced in its fullness with the coming of Mashiach. May that be b'mheira u'bi'ameinu. Amen. Thank you for joining. Have a beautiful evening.